Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. The rain fell like whispered memories, a slow, steady song draping the sleeping city. Tall spires stabbed into low-hanging clouds, their neon reflections shimmering in endless puddles. To Lyra, it was both breathtaking and suffocating. A place alive with yearning, and yet drowning in loneliness. She stood on the rooftop of a forgotten tower, where rusted satellite dishes pointed uselessly at stars long since out of reach. Her first night on Earth, the ship that had carried her across 17 light years rested somewhere beyond the city's pulse, camouflaged by adaptive technology. A home. Yet now it felt more like an anchor. Here, on this alien world, her purpose was supposed to begin, to understand human love. But so far, all she felt was lost. The sensation of Earth's atmosphere was thicker than Serenus IX's. Heavier, laden with scents of ozone, wet concrete, forgotten hopes. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady her racing twin hearts. Her people had taught her everything about humans, their history, their wars, their art. But no study could prepare her for the raw ache of standing alone under their weeping sky. She flexed her fingers against the railing, watching droplets cling to her skin. Strange. On her world, rain was programmed, engineered for optimal crop growth. Here it fell without asking permission. Wild, untamed. Maybe love is the same. She thought, tightening her hood against the drizzle. A sudden movement at the far end of the rooftop caught her eye. A man silhouetted against the flickering skyline. Tall. Still. His posture spoke of weight unseen, burdens carried too long. Drawn by something deeper than curiosity, something like instinct. Lyra moved closer, her steps silent on the slick concrete. She could have activated her translator implant, could have engaged with the sterile precision of her training. But something inside her whispered, no technology now. Just be. As she neared, details sharpened. The way his shoulders tensed against the cold, the way his fingers curled and uncurled at his sides, restless, searching. And when he turned, his eyes catching the city's broken light locked with hers. There was no fear there, no shock at her faintly luminescent hair, her too perfect stillness. Only recognition, the kind that passes between two beings who have, both in their own way, lost something they cannot name. Lyra stopped a few paces away. She didn't know the right human words yet, but somehow she knew this moment needed silence. The rain shifted, softening, as if holding its breath. Aiden, though she didn't yet know his name, gave a slow, careful nod. As if inviting her into a fragile truce, neither of them understood yet. She mirrored the gesture. Without a word, they walked. Through crumbling stairwells and narrow alleyways, past street vendors closing up for the night, neon signs flickering like dying stars. Everywhere around them the city breathed, a living organism of dreams, regrets, and relentless hope. They stopped at a battered vending machine, half swallowed by ivy. Aiden tapped it once, then twice. The machine sputtered before spitting out a packet of warm roasted chestnuts. He offered it to her, palm up, a cautious gift. Lyra stared, heart pounding. Food-sharing rituals, one of the first signs of trust, her lessons whispered. Slowly, reverently, she accepted the offering. The chestnut's warmth seeped into her cold fingers, grounding her in the strangeness of this world. The first bite was startling. Sweet, smoky, earthy. Tears burned her eyes unexpectedly. Not from the taste, but from the kindness of it. He smiled at her reaction, small and wry. A man who perhaps had not smiled in a very long time. A tug at the corner of her lips, her first clumsy attempt at a human smile, answered him. Later, they found the cat, a small, half-starved creature hiding beneath the crumbling awning of a forgotten bookstore. Its eyes, wide and suspicious, followed their approach. Aiden crouched, speaking soft nonsense into the rain-soaked night. No grand gestures, no demands. Just patience. Lyra observed with fascination. In her world, creatures were healed by algorithms, comfort delivered by sterile surrogates. But here, he knelt for a creature too weak to offer anything in return. Without thinking, she lowered herself beside him, her knees soaking through. The cat, trembling, crept forward, and Aidan simply waited. No reaching, no forcing. When the cat finally brushed against his hand, he didn't lift it. He let the creature choose him. Lyra's chest ached in a way she had no words for. Tentatively, she extended her hand as well. The cat bumped its damp head against her fingers. A spark, softer than electricity, fiercer than gravity, jumped. Between them, her voice, when it came, was barely more than a vibration in her throat. "Is this love?" Aidan turned to her, and for a long moment he said nothing. The rain ran down his face like falling stars. His mouth quirked into a bittersweet line before he whispered, "Not quite. But it's where love begins." He opened his hand, palm facing up. An invitation. Lyra hesitated, centuries of fear and duty pulling her back. What if she failed? What if her people had been wrong, and love was something no outsider could ever truly grasp? Her hand shook as she reached for his. When their skin touched, a warmth bloomed up her arm, into her chest, into her mind, quieting every doubt. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Galactic Nova Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. Above them, the sky finally cleared. One by one, the stars emerged, tentative, trembling. Lyra looked up, and for the first time in her life, the stars looked less like destinations and more like promises. She turned back to him, her voice a trembling whisper, full of wonder and terror all at once. "Then, show me." Aidan didn't speak. He just squeezed her hand gently, once, twice, the universal rhythm of "I'm here." "You're not alone." And for the first time since she left her world, Lyra smiled without thinking about it at all. The night deepened, but the city never truly slept. Lights blinked like tired eyes in the distance, and low music from hidden bars drifted through cracked windows. Somewhere a siren wailed, a thin, lonely sound swallowed quickly by the endless hum of existence. Aidan led Lyra through the back alleys, places the city had long since given up on, where vines broke through concrete and murals of forgotten. Heroes peeled from crumbling walls. He glanced at her occasionally, as if reassuring himself she was still real. Lyra drank in everything. The way puddles reflected broken neon halos, the sharp chill of water seeping into her boots, the scent of oil and rain. Every sensation felt magnified, overwhelming yet precious. On Serenus 9 all was controlled, curated, perfected. Here even imperfection had a kind of rough beauty. She stumbled once on a cracked tile. Instinctively, Aidan reached out, steadying her with a hand to her elbow. Just a touch, barely a heartbeat. But to Lyra it felt seismic. He caught me, she thought, stunned. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Aidan didn't speak. He only smiled, a quiet, patient thing, and gestured forward. They came upon a park half swallowed by the ruins of a shopping district. Jungle vines coiled around rusting playground equipment. Old lampposts flickered like distant stars on the verge of burning out. At the center of the park stood an ancient oak, its limbs twisted and gnarled, roots shattering the concrete like bones breaking free from skin. Without a word, Aidan led her beneath its sheltering branches. He pulled something from the inside of his jacket, a small battered thermos. He unscrewed the lid and poured out 2 small portions of steaming liquid into cracked tin cups. He handed one to her. Lyra took it cautiously, sniffing the contents. The scent was unfamiliar yet comforting, something earthy, spiced, rich. She sipped and gasped. Heat exploded across her tongue, warm, bittersweet, smoky. It chased the chill from her bones and spread golden tendrils through her chest. Aidan chuckled quietly, watching her expression. "Coffee," he murmured. "Not perfect, but it helps." She took another cautious sip, cradling the cup in both hands, a small act of sharing. And yet to her, it felt monumental. They sat down on the low, Roots of the oak. For a time there was only the sound of distant rain, the hiss of the cooling city and their breathing. Finally, Lyra found the courage to speak. "Why?" "Help me," she asked, voice halting but sincere. "You do not know what I am." Aidan stared into his cup, as if the swirling liquid held the answers to the universe. "Maybe," he said slowly. "You're not so different from the rest of us." He looked up, meeting her gaze without flinching. Everyone's from somewhere else. Everyone's carrying something they can't explain. A heavy silence stretched between them. Lyra felt her heart, her real one, the deeper one, contract painfully. She had come prepared for mistrust, suspicion, fear. She had not prepared for kindness without condition. Is this love? She wondered again, but didn't ask aloud. It didn't feel like the right moment. Instead, she asked the question she had never dared voice back on Serenus 9. What does it feel like, Hus, when you love someone? Aidan leaned back against the tree, closing his eyes. You'll know, he said softly. It's when the space between you and someone else disappears, when their pain feels like yours, and their happiness feels better than your own. He opened his eyes again, and the look he gave her wasn't guarded, wasn't polite. It was raw. Love isn't safe, he added. But it's real. Lyra's fingers tightened around her cup. Somewhere deep inside her, a place untouched by training, by missions, by duty, a tiny seed of longing stirred. She wanted to understand. No, she needed to. She needed to feel what he spoke of. Even if it meant breaking herself open. Suddenly, as if sensing the tremor in her heart, Aidan shifted closer. Their knees brushed. The warmth of him, the reality of him, was more overwhelming than any planetary gravity Lyra had ever encountered. Her breathing quickened. She could feel her twin hearts racing in her chest, hammering against her ribs like they wanted to reach him first. Slowly, almost reverently, Aidan lifted a hand, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a wet strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather-light, but it burned. And then, something even more extraordinary. Lyra's mind, usually so orderly, flooded with visions. Not from memory, not from logic, but from him. Flashes of loneliness, him sitting in empty apartments, surrounded by echoes. Flashes of love once held, hazy. Images of laughter, kisses, loss. The wordless longing that had shaped him like waves shaping stone. She gasped, blinking back tears she didn't know she could shed. The contact, it had opened something. Some fragile psychic bridge between them. Not complete communication, not yet, but a beginning. Aidan dropped his hand instantly, guilt flashing across his face. "Sorry," he said gruffly, mistaking her reaction for discomfort. "Too much." But Lyra, still trembling, reached out, catching his hand before it could fall away. Completely. "Not too much," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Not enough." The rain had stopped entirely now. The air smelled of earth and new beginnings. Somewhere in the distance, dawn was beginning to crack open the night. But neither of them moved. For here, under the broken oak, two strangers from different worlds held onto each other, as if the universe itself might fall apart if they let go. The sun never rose as it did on Serenus 9. There was no perfect gradient of light to signal the beginning of the day. Here it was all shadows and edges, an eternal twilight spilling across the city like ink. For Lyra, the absence of a clear line between night and day felt unsettling. And yet, there was something beautiful in it, a kind of freedom. Aidan had walked her back to the tower after their quiet, tender moment beneath the oak tree, but something between them had shifted. A fragile bridge had formed, not with words, but through the rawness of what had been shared. He hadn't tried to touch her again, but the silence between them felt warmer, more intentional, and her thoughts too, twisting and turning around him, felt more alive. That night, Lyra lay in the small, stark room assigned to her in the tower, the sounds of the city seeping in from the broken windows. She didn't sleep, not truly. Her mind raced. Her heart still thundered, both full and aching with the weight of the connection she'd begun to form with Aidan. Is this love? She asked herself again, and for the first time she wasn't sure. She had come to this planet with a singular mission, yet now Now she wasn't sure if she could even trust the way her heart was pulling her. A soft beep from the corner interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Her translator interface, still silent most of the time when not actively translating words, flashed up a new notification. A message. Meet me. 7 p.m., don't be late. It was from Aiden. She stared at the words for a long time. The message was brief, but somehow the urgency behind it was clear. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew she had to go. When she arrived at the designated place, it wasn't where she had thought it would be. No towering structure or gleaming building. Instead, she found herself at the edge of the city, at the edge of the ruins. The last remnants of a forgotten war, buried beneath layers of concrete. And grass. Here the air smelled different, earthier, tinged with the scent of crushed metal and earth. The scattered remnants of old buildings and fractured streets lay like sleeping giants, silent yet full of stories. Aiden was already there, standing near an overturned truck, his back to her as he stared into the distance. For a moment, Lyra wondered if he could sense her presence before she even made a sound. The way he stood there, solid, unyielding, reminded her of the oak tree, weathered by time yet rooted deeply, unmovable. She took a breath, slowly crossing the distance between them. Every step felt heavy, weighted. Every part of her longed to understand what was unfolding between them, but she didn't know how to name it. She didn't know how to explain what she felt. Aiden turned when she was close enough, his eyes meeting hers without hesitation. "No guard, no walls. I brought you here," he said softly, "because this place, it's where I come to think." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "To think?" She glanced at the ruins around them. "It feels abandoned." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Maybe, but it's real, you know. More real than all the shiny buildings and technology." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's no pretending here. No masks." She stood still, letting the words settle into her chest. There was truth in them. Aiden wasn't talking about the physical ruins. They both knew what they were. No, he was speaking of something deeper, something between them that felt like the cracked pavement and broken structures surrounding them. Something unspoken and fragile, waiting for the right moment to heal. "Why do you feel the need to mask things?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling just slightly. The question was more for herself than for him. Was that what she had been doing, all along, hiding behind her purpose? Her mission, Aiden didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at her for a long moment, his brow furrowing slightly. Then, in a quiet voice, he replied, "Because it's safer. If you hide what matters most, no one can hurt you." Lyra felt something crack within her at his words, something she hadn't known was so tightly bound up in her. She knew that. Fear. She had known it on Serenus 9 as her people taught her the way to suppress emotion, to keep the mission at the forefront. But here, with him, that fear didn't feel so easy to cling to. "You're afraid of love," she said, the words slipping from her lips before she could stop them. Aiden's gaze faltered. For a brief second, he looked vulnerable, almost lost. And then he quickly masked it with a forced chuckle. "You're not wrong. But you're not wrong either," she added softly. "I came here to understand love, but I think I'm just starting to see that maybe I need to feel it." There was a long silence, and in that silence the air between them thickened, crackling with an unspoken tension. Both of them stood on the edge of something powerful, something unknown. Aiden's hand twitched at his side, and Lyra noticed the small, barely perceptible tremor in his fingers. He clenched his fist. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she realized it wasn't just her that was afraid. He was, too. "Lyra?" His voice was rough, like something he'd been holding back for far too long. "If you want to know what love is, you need to know this. It's not what they tell you. It's not safe. It's not clean. And it's not always beautiful." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "Love breaks you, it pulls you apart. But in the end, it makes you whole." Her heart fluttered painfully in her chest at the weight of his words. She knew he wasn't speaking just about the abstract concept of love. He was speaking from experience. And for the first time since she had arrived on Earth, Lyra felt something strange, a flicker of understanding. She reached out, tentative, but without hesitation this time. Her fingers brushed his. For a heartbeat, nothing else existed. Not the crumbling ruins around them, not the distant cityscape. Only the warmth of his touch and the raw truth behind his words. His eyes softened as he gazed down at her. He didn't pull away. "I'll show you," he said quietly. "But first you have to trust me, even if it scares you. Because love, it's always going to scare you." Lyra swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. And yet, in this moment it didn't seem so impossible. "I trust you," she whispered. And for the first time she felt the truth of that declaration. It was a slow unraveling, like the way the stars in the night sky appeared to shift just slightly, imperceptibly, until one day you realize that nothing is where it once was. That feeling of things changing beneath your feet when you least expect it lingered in the air between them, thick and unspoken. The next few days passed in a blur. There were moments of quiet connection, of shared looks and unspoken understanding, small tender gestures that built the delicate architecture of their bond. Lyra found herself waiting for him at the tower's entrance every morning, as if her body had grown accustomed to his presence, to the pull he had on her heart. And Aidan, though he said little, was always there, appearing at her side without fanfare, as though his own existence had come to mirror hers in the most subtle way. But despite the warmth that flickered between them, there was always a gap, an invisible line neither could cross, a question neither could answer, a quiet, gnawing thing that pulled at the edges of their shared moments. Love, Lyra realized, was a kind of reckoning, not just with another person but with the self. It was a test of who you were and who you could become, and as much as she had started to feel for Aidan, there was something missing, something he wasn't saying. There was a weight behind his silence, a grief that lingered in the quiet corners of his eyes, something that flinched every time he brushed past her. He hadn't spoken of his past, not once, and she knew somehow he never would. It was the 5th night since they had met under the ancient oak tree, when the city's uneasy hum was broken by an abrupt shift, an urgent signal. Lyra stood at the window of her small room, watching the city outside. For a long moment everything felt still, suspended in a moment of fragile peace. Then she saw it, a single, dark ship, cutting through the air like a shadow. No sounds, no warning, just the eerie calm that accompanied its descent. Her heart skipped. It wasn't supposed to be here. No ship, no one, was supposed to land tonight. Her pulse quickened, and without thinking, she rushed to the door, her thoughts flying faster than her feet could carry her. No, she couldn't allow herself to get caught up in this, not now. There were no more missions, no more orders. She wasn't that soldier anymore, not here, not with him. But even as she tried to push those thoughts away, she knew. She had to go. She had to face whatever this was, whatever this disturbance signaled. The ship's thrusters hummed to a stop just outside the tower, and as Lyra stepped into the night, the air grew heavy, thick with something unspoken. She felt a pull, a tug of something both familiar and foreign. Aidan was already there. His back was to her, his posture tense as he faced the ship. There was a coldness about him, an edge in his stance she hadn't seen before. "What's happening?" Lyra's voice broke through the silence, softer than she intended. Aidan didn't turn to her right away. When he did, his eyes were harder, more guarded. "They're here." His voice was low, barely a whisper. Lyra's heart stuttered in her chest. "Who?" He exhaled sharply, frustration and fear flashing across his face. "People I was trying to outrun. The kind of people who never forget a face." He swallowed hard. "People who'll never stop hunting me, Lyra. Not until I'm either dead or back in their control." A heavy silence passed between them. She had never seen him like this, so exposed, so raw. The sound of the ship's hatch opening cut through the tension, and then they emerged. 3 figures, tall, cloaked, their faces hidden in shadow. They moved with a deliberate pace, their boots crunching against the cracked earth beneath them. Lyra instinctively moved closer to Aidan, as if the space between them was the only thing keeping her grounded. One of the figures stepped forward, the faint outline of their face becoming visible. A sharp chin, an angular jawline. There was something unsettlingly familiar about them. Lyra couldn't place it, but her instincts were telling her this was no chance encounter. "What do you want?" Aiden asked, his voice strained. The figure spoke with an accent that sounded foreign and distant. "You've been found, Aiden." Lyra's stomach turned. She could feel the weight of their words sink deep into her chest. "What are you going to do about it?" The figure continued, voice icy sharp. Aiden's eyes flicked briefly to Lyra, and in that fleeting moment, she saw the rawness, the depth of everything he had been hiding. He stood there for a long moment, the tension building until it felt like the entire world was holding its breath, and then, as if coming to a decision, he spoke again. "I'll protect her." Aiden's voice was steady, resolute. For her. Lyra's heart caught, the way he said it, the way he made that promise in the face of danger. He had chosen her. The figures hesitated, their eyes narrowing as they took in the scene, studying the way Aiden stood beside her, unwavering. A long moment of silence passed, and finally, the first figure spoke again, this time softer, almost regretful. "This is your last warning, Aiden." They turned slowly, as if leaving wasn't a choice at all. "Run while you still can." Aiden didn't move, he didn't flinch. He simply watched them go, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. And as the ship lifted back into the air, disappearing into the night sky, Lyra felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on her shoulders. Aiden had made his choice, and it wasn't just for him anymore. It was for her too. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his arm. For once there was no hesitation, no fear. Only the warmth of her touch grounding him, grounding them both. "We'll face it together," she whispered, and in that moment, she knew. Despite the weight of what was coming, despite the danger that lay ahead, they were no longer just two strangers from different worlds. They were a team, a force, bound together by something stronger than fear, by something that, despite all logic, still had the power to change everything. The days that followed felt like a haze. The threat of the unknown loomed over them, ever present, ever dangerous. But it did not overshadow the moment that changed everything between them. Their bond had solidified, like the roots of a tree pressing deep into the soil. It was as if they had crossed an invisible line that neither of them could see at the time, but both felt in their bones. Lyra had learned so much in such a short time, more than she ever could have imagined, not just about love or about Aiden, but about herself. What she had feared for so long, what she had never allowed herself to feel, was now a living, breathing thing inside her. She couldn't escape it anymore. And as terrifying as it was, she realized that she didn't want to. The towering structure where they had spent so many nights together now felt too small, too enclosed. Lyra could feel the walls pressing in on her, each brick and piece of metal whispering of the past they were trying to outrun, the whispers of danger, the whispers of uncertainty. Aiden had kept his promise. He had never wavered in his devotion, his protectiveness. But as much as he had opened himself to her, there were still moments where he closed off again, where the weight of his past crushed him in silence. She had begun to understand this. There was no true escape. Not from what they were running from, and not from what they were running toward. She had stayed close to him always, as much as he would let her. But now, she couldn't ignore the inevitable truth. "Aiden." Her voice broke through the silence as they stood together at the edge of the city once more, facing the horizon where the last traces of light fell over the ruins. He didn't answer right away. His gaze remained fixed, distant. But she knew he heard her. Knew he felt her presence like a constant pull at his heart. "I think it's time we stopped running," she said quietly, the weight of her words settling between them like the cool, evening air. Aiden finally turned toward her, his eyes flickering with something unreadable. The ghost of a past he couldn't quite shake seemed to hang on his every expression. "You can't outrun everything," he replied softly. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a quiet resignation. Lyra took a step forward, feeling the last of her uncertainty slip away with each stride. "I don't want to outrun it anymore." "I don't want to be alone, Aiden." The words hung in the air, heavy with the raw truth she had been avoiding. She felt the tears sting at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. She had been so afraid of losing herself, of losing her purpose. But now she understood. Love wasn't the thing that took her from her purpose. It was the thing that gave her the strength to embrace it. Aiden took a deep breath, his jaw clenching as he fought to hold back the emotions that were threatening to overwhelm him. But then something shifted. The familiar hardness in his expression softened. Slowly he closed the distance between them, his hand reaching out for hers. Lyra's heart raced. They had been dancing around this for so long, this moment. But now it was impossible to deny. The pull, the need, the truth of what they had become to each other. He cupped her cheek gently, a delicate touch that made her breath catch in her throat. "I'm not perfect, Lyra. I'm not who you think I am," he whispered, his forehead touching hers. "I've done things I regret, things that make me unworthy of this, of you." She shook her head, placing her hand over his, pressing into the warmth of his touch. "You're not perfect, but neither am I," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "But what we've built here, it's real. And that's enough. It has to be enough." For a moment neither of them moved. The city around them had fallen into a peaceful hush, and the only sound that remained was the quiet rhythm of their breathing. Then Aiden leaned forward, his lips brushing against her forehead. Lyra closed her eyes at the contact. It wasn't the fiery kiss of passion. No, this was something more. It was tender, as if he was offering her a piece of his brokenness, his vulnerability, as much as he was giving her his love. "I love you," he whispered, the words almost swallowed by the night. Lyra felt her chest tighten, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, she allowed herself to say the words that had been stuck in her throat for so long, words she had feared would make her weak. "I love you, too." The silence that followed was filled with a kind of peace, something neither of them had felt before. In that moment, they didn't need to say anything more. They didn't need promises or explanations. What they had was enough, for now. But there was still danger on the horizon. There always would be. The people from the ship would not let go so easily, and Lyra knew that their time together was fleeting, just like the stars above them, fleeting but beautiful. "I wish things could be different," Aiden said, his voice low. "I wish I could promise you forever." She smiled softly, her hand resting on his chest. "Maybe forever isn't what we need. Maybe what we need is now." Her words hung in the air between them, a fragile truth that resonated with both of them. Forever was uncertain, and they both knew it. But now, in this moment, all they could give each other was now. As Aiden kissed her, slowly, gently, Lyra closed her eyes and let the world fade away. In his arms, the weight of everything, of the past, of the future, seemed to disappear, replaced only by the warmth of the present. And as the kiss deepened, a strange sense of certainty filled her. They were no longer alone. If this story moved you, share it with someone who loves powerful tales from distant worlds. Don't forget to like, and let us know in the comments. What would you have done?